Did you know there are different types of sleep? And those different types affect your body in completely different ways. It's crucial to understand the science of sleep in order to figure out why you might be having sleep issues in the first place. Dr. Joseph sheds light on just that in this episode. Dr. Joseph, in this series, you mentioned the science of sleep. What is the science of sleep?
So there's two types of sleep, REM sleep and non-REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. During non-REM sleep, your mind is not as active, but your body can still move. So it makes sense that your body should not be active at the same time as your mind, or else you'll act out whatever you're doing in your sleep,
Right.
and you could actually hurt yourself or hurt someone else.
Which does happen to people.
It does.
Yeah.
It's called sleepwalking. So at the first three stages of sleep, the non-REM sleep, your body is becoming more progressively placed into a deeper and deeper sleep. The initial parts of sleep are very light sleep, so someone can still arouse you out of sleep. That's why sometimes you have a feeling of falling during sleep, because you're at the beginning stages of sleep.
Oh, okay.
And as you go deeper and deeper into sleep, your body suppresses cortisol, which is that stress hormone we talked about that arouses everything. And that way you can fall deeper into sleep. Now, non-REM has three stages. So you go from N1 to N2 to N3, back to N2, and then to REM sleep.
Okay.
REM sleep is when you're, it's called rapid eye movement. It's when you can dream, but your body cannot move. So that's when some people have some of their best ideas. So if you want to get up and write your ideas down, then try to set your alarm a little early so you disrupt the REM sleep. And again, you go through these 90-minute cycles to get a full night's rest.
So on a biological level, talk a little bit more about what's happening to us.
So we discussed how the pineal gland emits something called melatonin. During the day, your pineal gland is suppressed by daylight, but it builds up a storage. And then during the nighttime, when daylight goes away, your body starts to set your clock. So it starts to drip, drip, drip melatonin that puts you into the sleep cycle. Now, everyone has different sleep. We mentioned how your sleep is unique compared to other people because you need to have longer sleep cycles and you also take naps. But the majority of people...
I sound like such a lazy person.
No, you're not.
Okay, yes.
There are some people who have unique sleep
Well,
cycles.
that's me,
Don't
that's
judge.
Me, that's me.
So most people do sleep all in one block at night.
Yeah.
But there have been studies where they put people in, to simulate a cave environment, they put people in this cave and they tried to take away the sunlight as a stimulus for the pineal gland. And everyone has a different sleep cycle. So with this experiment, they found that people had unique sleep cycles. Some people had the monophasic sleep that's typical, where you sleep all at once at night, and other people had biphasic sleep schedules where they were sleeping a little bit during the day, a little bit at night. And then there's something that you brought up, the polyphasic sleep, where some people slept in wider spurts.
And these people were living in a cave-like environment, so they weren't affected by the light.
By the sunlight, correct.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
What is a circadian rhythm?
So because we're human beings and we're on this earth and the earth revolves around the sun, we are part of this biosphere that really is on a 24-hour schedule. And everyone has their own unique inner clock that responds to the sun. So we discussed having the biphasic sleep rhythms, monophasic sleep rhythms based on who you are. Circadian rhythms are your inner clock that are set by daylight and melatonin.
So do we all have the same circadian rhythms then?
We all have different circadian rhythms.
So even though we're on the same planet, we all have different circadian rhythms.
Correct.
Okay, I understand. Now, what does the ideal night of sleep look like?
So for adults, and this is rare, most people do not get 8 hours of sleep.
What do most people get?
They get probably like less than 6 hours.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Adults we're talking about.
Right.
For younger kids, you want to get at least 9 to 12 hours.
Okay.
That also doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about gaming and so forth and devices. So typically you want to stick to those recommendations, but if you can't get that full amount that's desired, at least try to get good quality sleep.
And how do you do that?
So we discussed all those tips. Keeping blue light or daylight at a minimum, not working in bed, not using devices in bed, keeping the room cool, not eating too heavily at nighttime, exercising, all of the tips, the progressive muscle relaxation, the deep breathing, all of the relaxing tips at bedtime.
And finding a husband to give you a massage. These are the things that we discuss in detail, and I believe episode 5, so make sure you check that out. All right, so that it does look different for a child and an adult. And in our treatment episode, we talk a lot about medications and how those are used. But medications can't replace sleep for us. Why is that?
Medications help people to fall asleep easier, but people who use Ambien aren't necessarily getting better sleep. They just can't remember that they had problems falling asleep. So it's not actually improving the sleep architecture. They're just not stressed about it the next day because they don't remember having problems with sleep.
I'm an uncle, I have a nephew, and he's a great sleeper. If a child is a great sleeper early on, is that indicative of them being a great sleeper later in life?
Infant sleep architecture is completely different than adult sleep architecture. And there's a whole school of thought within sleep medicine where some people believe that sleep early on in infancy is so important for solidifying memory and learning. And so by definition, infants are learning at such a high pace. They need more sleep. They need to recover. Their brains are myelinating. They are solidifying memories.
Yes.
So they're very different. Their brains are very, very different, less crinkly than our adult brains.
That makes sense. So it's not indicative then that he'll be a great sleeper. And so parents
Apples and
shouldn't
oranges.
worry if, oh, my child isn't sleeping through the night or she's a bad sleeper, that means they're always going to be a bad sleeper.
Correct.
Okay.
Now there is something called temperance and how you're made, and so or how you behave as an infant. And some people who are more irritable as infants, that can predict whether or not you are more anxious or depressed as an adult. However, it's not linear, and so I don't think people should lose sleep over it.
Okay.
Sorry,
Oh, man.
I couldn't resist.
Oh, I'm a little irritated. It might just because I'm sleepy. That's very good. Okay, now real quick, you mentioned a study at Brown. Did you want to mention that?
So I'll share a personal story. My daughter, oh my gosh, had the worst colic. I became a colic expert. So like around 6 weeks, she was like crying, not sleeping. And so I read, and this is still a theory that people are still studying, but I started to read about melatonin and serotonin, and the two are chemically linked. And so the thought is that when infants sleep during the day and then shift towards more of a nighttime sleep rhythm, their melatonin and serotonin are evening out. And so that's why you see the irritability with colic and also the shift in the sleep with colic. And so when my daughter's colic finally passed, and then she started sleeping sleeping longer during the night hours, she also became less irritable. So I thought, wow, that's so fascinating. The point is that we need to study this more. We don't know enough about it because who studies babies' brains?
Right,
like you can't do that very easily.
Yeah.
But a lot of what we know about sleep is based on adult research.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest misconception is with sleep?
So we also talked about that, right? So I think that there are a lot of things that you can do in your environment to help with sleep, and I don't think people acknowledge that. I think they just think that it's work, it's stress, it's bills, it's a relationship. But sleep is within your control. There are things that you can do, even if you do have stress that's worsening sleep.
Yeah. Well, we know everybody needs sleep, and as you have mentioned, there are 80 sleep disorders, and so we're going to look at some of the most popular and most common ones in our next episode.